Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk all things hockey are your hosts, Brad Crisco, Ryan Hanna, and Evan Lobsinger.
All right, party's over. Sorry to kill the fun. Substitute teacher's gone. Dad's back.
Yep. The time before Ryan and after Ryan.
People were thrilled, man. I saw some comments flood in, and it was like, Brad and Evan were great. Brad and Evan were unhinged. It was so great not having Ryan there. Please keep this permanent. It was awesome. So,
the concern you must have had when the realization dawned on you that one of those two episodes, we had no choice but for the main topic to be violence.
You know what, man? I was watching the ocean go by, laying in a hammock with a drink in hand, and I was like,
you couldn't be any further from hockey.
What happens, happens. It's in their hands now. If I come back to no show, it'll have died a good death.
I can't remember. I think I was in Florida. I was like, it was sunny. It was awesome. I was sitting sitting at the pool with a drink, and I was like, no wonder no one cares about hockey around here. Can't blame them. This is amazing.
The weather's too good.
Yeah.
I will say that something that's extremely shocking, though, is that in 2 episodes, Brad, without me, you have somehow convinced Evan to show up to podcast business casual dressed.
Yep. You got to dress for the position you want, and I'm clearly trying to go for president of the podcast, if that title even exists.
Well, honestly, man, you can have it. Based on what you're wearing now and what we're wearing, it's all yours.
I'm chief executive officer.
Oh, okay.
I can't be operating officer, because that's you.
Okay.
Financial officer, also you. Head of the board, I can be that as well. Very robust job set. I think I've got the skills to cover it.
By the end of the episode, we need to find a position for Brad, though. Because I have 1, you have 3, and we have none for him.
Chief Human Resource Officer.
Oh, we're all in trouble.
Chief Information Officer.
You are the CIO. Good for you.
Okay, we'll go with that.
Welcome back to the Winged Wheel Podcast, folks. I'm back, so I hope you all enjoyed the time with Brad and Evan. Very much appreciate these guys for not holding down the fort, isn't the right way to say it, but keeping the ship steady and going full blast during a very newsy couple of episodes while I was gone. So hope everyone enjoyed those. We're back in studio for this one. We're back to our regularly programmed content here. We have the Christmas tree up in the studio. I wasn't able to get it up for the first 2 episodes of December, so I'm sure you guys were having a good chuckle that I wasn't able to express the holiday cheer for that, but we are holidayified for this episode. But without further ado, let's jump into the show. Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, the world of the NHL, and lots more. I am one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we're going to be talking about Detroit in their 2 games since you last heard from Brad and Evan, I should say. The Dallas game and the St. Louis game, wherein the themes were goals, goals, goals. And surprisingly, the Red Wings actually scored a good chunk of those. The Red Wings have collected yet another fired head coach, and we'll talk about that. Perron got his suspension for the cross-check to Zub, and the subsequent appeal process is happening right now, so we'll discuss that entire thing. Jonatan Berggren scored twice since being called up and is part of trade rumors, so I know Brad and Evan already jumped into that, but we'll talk a little bit more about it. Joe Veleno is that guy. We'll talk about the goalies, a little note on Nate Danielson, and more before we jump into NHL news, which is very plentiful. The Washington Capitals have 2 arena options to Arizona's 0. Vrana has continued his unfortunate cycle of being on the outs of a team. Tkachuk and Kochetkov almost came to blows yesterday. There's a lot to talk about. Before all that, a couple things. First, this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast is proudly brought to you by Labatt Blue Light. Created in 1983, this premium light Canadian Pilsner is a delicately balanced beer brewed with Cascade hops and a blend of malt. It's fresh, crisp, and brewed to the highest quality standards. There's a little bit of Canadian kindness in every sip of Labatt Blue Light. How did it get in there? They're Canadian. That's how. You can spread the love yourself by sharing a Labatt. And when you do share a Labatt, you're not just sharing a beer. You're sharing an experience that'll pair with anything from hockey to a hoedown, which I think is similar to what Evan's dressed for right now. So next time you're watching a hockey with your buds, be sure to share Labatt, because while you might not all root for the same team, although we on this podcast do hope you're rooting for the Red Wings, you can all enjoy a Labatt Blue Light. We honestly love going to games in Detroit and seeing Labatt being the beer that fans clamor for all over the arena. It's a reliable beer and great to have in your hand when celebrating a goal. So head to the link in the description of this episode or the one you see on your screen to find Labatt in stores near you today. You must be 21 or older, and as always, enjoy responsibly. Also, Winged Wheel Podcast Night with the Grand Rapids Griffins, Saturday, January 27th. Tickets are very, very, very scarce. I got an email earlier that it is, I think, down to the last 20 or so. So go to griffinshockey.com/WWP to get your tickets. It is a pregame live recording of the Winged Wheel Podcast in Grand Rapids. It'll feature head coach Dan Watson as well as Grand Rapids Griffins players. We'll all attend the game together, and you also get this sweet Grand Rapids Griffins Winged Wheel Podcast co-branded hat. So again, griffinshockey.com/WWP. Okay, Detroit played 2 games since you guys last took to the microphones, the first of which was against the Dallas Stars, and it was without Dylan Larkin, it was without JT Compher, and without David Perron. And suffice it to say, that game kind of went as expected.
Not really, though. The result of the Red Wings collecting 0 points in the standings was expected.
Yeah.
With those 3 out, you would think the Red Wings would lean hard on the defense. They understand they're literally missing half of their top 6. Goals might be tough to come by. They're going to have to go back to their super stingy style to weather the storm and try to scrape by with enough offense to pull out some points until these guys get back. Scoring 3 goals against Dallas isn't, world beating or anything, but I would say that is a very acceptable number for this group of forwards in that circumstance, which is what made it so disappointing to see the goaltending and the defense absolutely melt down. The game was the exact opposite of how I thought that game would be played, is probably the best way to phrase that.
Yeah, it was a 6-3 final. Detroit actually opened scoring with Daniel Sprong cleaning up in front. A great feed by Robbie Fabbri and Christian Fischer picking up that secondary assist. And after that, it was all Dallas. Heiskanen, Lindell, Robertson, Duchesne before Detroit got another goal. Jonatan Berggren, who was one of the emergency call-ups because everyone on Detroit is out, scored his first of the season. And I think that was really satisfying for everyone to see. No matter what you think about Berggren and his future in Detroit, which we'll talk more about, him collecting that goal was almost like he had a very business face on. Like, yeah, that's right. I will score in my first game being called back up. Gostisbehere and Mata on those assists, and Joe Veleno, who has been just lights out for Detroit recently. He scored on the power play from DeBrincat and Gostisbehere, but again, it was Pavelski, Heiskanen on the empty net after, and it was a 6-3 final. It's not just the defense themselves, although we'll talk more about that, Brad. I find that, you're missing Larkin and Compher, and those are 2, not just your top 2 centers, but 2 of your best two-way forwards. The team defense has kind of, predictably, like, you don't lose those guys and have no impact, but the team defense has kind of fallen apart and into disarray. Like, too many of the goals over these 2 games have been someone missed an assignment, which put a defenseman out of position, which just caused a chain reaction, and, Husso or Reimer got lit up.
Yeah, and the Red Wings, specifically this year, have always struggled defending off the rush, even with Compher and Larkin and some of their better skating forwards in the lineup. That problem, we'll talk about it with the Blues game too, really became apparent. And when you're behind the 8 ball, as soon as the puck touches your own blue line, yeah, it's hard to fall into a proper defensive structure from there. Now, good teams, when things go awry, will find a way to salvage it, find a way to make what they can of a bad situation. The Red Wings did not do that. Once the fire drill started, everybody just started running, and it happened time and time again. A lot of things you could point to on that. Obviously, this defense group this season so far, for the most part, has left a lot to be desired. Sometimes you are going to have a bad game on defense, and that's okay. You're never going to bat 1,000, but you hope the goaltending can bail you out. The Lindell goal in particular against Reimer is completely inexcusable given the time left in the period, which was, I believe, 1 or 2 seconds when that puck went in, which was, I seen someone on Twitter describe it as a shot a goalie would take in warm-ups.
What player is shooting from outside the blue line in warm-ups?
Yeah,
Brad.
Yeah. Hey, we're only doing so much skating in warm-ups, okay, Ryan? The net's far away, okay? Yeah. But yeah, and you hope that would happen, and it doesn't. Is there work here for the coaching to clean this up a little bit and do what they can to hammer the problems? Yeah. When the wheels fall off defensively as bad as they have the last few games, I should say, going all the way back to the San Jose game, I don't think anybody is without blame. Some people more blame than others, which I'll probably, again, point to goaltending right now.
Mm-hmm.
But something has to give is probably the best way to... I don't even know how to describe it, but yeah, something has to give.
My feeling on it, though, and like I did a lot of catch up on these games, so I watched the full games back once I had a moment to have a solid internet connection. And so maybe it's biased knowing the results, but to me, I don't feel like the defense, I feel like the defense isn't good right now, and the worst parts of the defense are very obvious. Like you have Seider and Walman playing really, really tough minutes. And I probably have not given enough credit to that on this podcast over the last, couple months, but they really are eating the worst of the minutes. I think Ben Chiarot, as we've discussed, is having a complete 180 of a season in the best of ways. Shane Gostisbehere offensively is that's his massive impact, but everything else is kind of like the heavy part of the anchor, and that's what we're seeing. But like you mentioned, Brad, there's at least some mix on a lot of these goals of, yeah, maybe the guy shouldn't have had that strong of an opportunity, but you really would have wanted your goalie to have that. Or, even worse on the spectrum, to plain and simple, that puck should never go in. That part of the scale of goaltending, I think, is happening a little bit more, where I think the defense has been not great of late, but I don't think it had to be this bad in terms of results. So I am looking a little bit more at goaltending than defense necessarily, because the defense kind of is what it has been and what it will continue to be until something changes. And that something is a 6'5", 6'6" Simon Edvinsson. To me, the goaltending just isn't bailing out the defense as it exists right now. And then you have the cherry on top of, like I mentioned before, your two-way forwards aren't in right now.
Well, we talked about it last episode in the best iteration of the Wing Wheel podcast, in my opinion.
That's right, yeah.
That
you created a lot of burners to tell me that on Twitter and YouTube, actually.
I'm a man of the people, Ryan. When I motivate them, they'll do what is needed to be done.
Your voice to text put in a lot of work this past week.
That is very true.
He's a man of the people because he is the people.
That's right.
Yeah.
There's two people online, you and Evan.
Yes, exactly. We were talking about this last episode. The goaltending's been what it is, but when you need the goalies to make a bunch of big saves or timely saves or steal a game, it really feels like that hasn't happened this year. I know Husso's made a couple big saves in the St. Louis game, but I'm talking about this retrospectively to Dallas. It just hasn't quite been there this year, and that's kind of almost uncharted territory for the Red Wings when their starting goaltending has been in the net. They've stolen games of recent years, or they've made the big saves when they need it, and this year just doesn't. I don't see that as much at all.
I think Brad had a good point. Like, there needs to be some adaptation here, and let's call this what it is. Like, this is a tough thing to navigate for any coach in the league. Like, unless you have one of the deepest teams in the NHL who's at the top of the league, or a goalie who can, do what Vasilevsky does, for example. It's really tough to make these adjustments on the fly, but when you have the kind of hit to your forward group that the Red Wings have right now, it's tough to adapt. The systems can only take you so far if the goalie's not going to bail you out, at least from time to time. It's less about continuing to thrive at like an 8-2 in your last 10 pace, and more about, staying the bleeding or plugging the holes on a sinking ship just to make sure you can make it to dock. It's a tough thing to do, but this is like the next iteration of, okay, you want to be a playoff team. You can't just be good when everyone's healthy and playing well. You have to be able to adapt in the middle of the season. And like you mentioned, Brett, I think that is a coaching thing. So I mean, some credit there. They did it against St. Louis. I think, they outscored their problems.
That's what it is, though. They outscored their problems. And for those longtime listeners right now rolling their eyes, us talking about we need to clamp down defensively after begging for 7 years to have an entertaining team. And now they
Brad, a hypocrite?
We talk out of both sides of our mouth if you ever pick that up.
That's right.
Now they are outscoring their problems, and we're all saying, well, I don't know about that.
They're one of the top. Are they the second highest scoring team in the league right now?
They are one of the top scoring teams by expected goals and shooting percentage. There are some red flags there that won't be sustainable.
I will not listen to that.
However, it's not like if you take those red flags into account that they free fall into a bottom 10 team. They are a good offensive team still, just maybe not, top 3, 4 in the league.
Hey.
I only look at statistics that support my argument.
That's the way the good Lord intended.
Exactly.
111 goals for the Canucks. They're first. Detroit, 106 goals in second.
Who's third?
The Vegas Golden Knights with 105.
The NHL's bizarre.
It's a weird league. Anyhow, Brad.
Yeah, so the St. Louis game, getting back to your transition there, your segue that I completely ruined, I have no regrets.
We're back to normal.
Brad and I, our timing's off now. You're throwing it off. We don't know how to read the cues anymore. It's, we're ramping up. It's preseason all over again.
Our ratings were getting too high. I knew we had to make it back fast.
Exactly.
My mind's everywhere. I can't form a thought. I don't understand how the Dallas game was Matthew Joseph's fault, but I'll get there. Give me a minute. Anyways, point being, they didn't play well in St. Louis, but in St. Louis, they successfully outscored their problems, which is what they couldn't do against the better team in Dallas.
I think in St. Louis, it was almost literally Joe Veleno and Michael Rasmussen outmuscled the problems and got it done. But yeah, that game, the St. Louis game where Detroit won 6-4, the game was a wild ride. Seider scored first to put St. Louis up 1-0 very right in the first half of the first period, and then Detroit went up 2-1, and then it was 3-2 St. Louis, and then it was 3-3, and then it was 4-3, and then Detroit scored 3 goals in the third period. We'll talk about those goals individually, but it was a big back and forth. And Evan, you mentioned it. Like, Husso had a strong third period, I found, and he made some key saves, but he also had some moments in there where you're like, is it necessarily all his fault? No, but you would hope that he'd have a little bit more. I'll say I think Husso's been getting gradually better over the course of the season.
Yeah, and without, totally remembering every single specific save that Husso made in the St. Louis game, I thought it was mostly a wash in terms of what I thought he should have versus, things he saved that maybe he shouldn't have. Like the Scandella breakaway goal. I mean, that thing couldn't have been any more in the right spot to go in. Like, can't really blame Husso on that. I think, was that shorthanded too?
Oh, yeah.
Name me a more iconic duo than shorthanded breakaways into the Detroit Red Wings.
St. Louis, what is that, their 8th shorthanded goal this year or something? They were literally more lethal on the penalty kill than they were on the power play.
I should have saw it coming.
I literally think Detroit gave up 3 shorthanded goals while you were gone.
And 2 of them were breakaways, I think.
Things have been going well, I see.
But to Evan's point, and this is a point we've made about Husso and overall the goaltending all year, any of those goals individually, could you really blame Husso? No. You can understand how all those pucks went in, and you're not mad at him for any of them individually.
Would be nice to save one.
Would have been nice if he got 1 or 2 of them, and 1 or 2 of them he had a chance.
Well, what do elite goalies do in the NHL? The elite goalies make saves to keep their teams in it, and they make saves they shouldn't. And then, like, the Hall of Famers just win series by themselves.
Yeah.
For me, Husso right now is just, he's playing very, it sounds kind of bad, but like average.
I would say average is
generous.
A little generous,
like, yeah. Like it's not getting me excited, It's okay, it'd be, like I said, if he start making some AAA saves and keeping the Red Wings in games, I'm gonna totally eat my words, and I'll just look in the camera now and say it. But yeah, it hasn't. I'm sure he would think that his season could be going better.
I'm at the point with Husso where I'm very confident and very comfortable with him in the net, in the sense that he's not letting any, we'll call them warm-up shots in.
He's not James Reimer.
Yeah, exactly. He's he's not letting the real stinkers in. But when the chips are down and it's a 2-on-1 or a big penalty kill or a great shot, I have zero faith that puck's ever, even once getting stopped.
We're also getting to the point of the season where a lot of the kind of built up tension across the NHL is loosening a bit in terms of if a goalie's on waiver, he's automatically going to be claimed, and you start to see bodies of work. And if this trend continues with Reimer, you could, if the Red Wings needed the roster spot, you might see him go through waivers and the Red Wings being confident that he could actually do so. So
any NHL team who's watched his last few games, I think we can probably confidently say he'd clear.
Let's talk about the goals in the game for now. Jake Walman, for Detroit's opening goal to tie the game, he cleaned up a rebound in front, but that's almost not doing it justice. He's really great at picking that opposite corner with whatever kind of shot he has, and it was like slick little, just scooped up the puck and fired it home. So nice little snipe from him. And then Berggren again, second goal in as many games, cleaned up in front. Very happy to see that. More on Berggren soon, but again, same as the first one. That's what he deserves, and for him to put in that work and show that the Red Wings can get offense from their depth when players like Larkin and Compher and Perron are out, that was, I think, key for Detroit to see. Seider started a rush from his own end and ended up banging in a Rasmussen rebound, I believe it was, and then Raymond capitalized on a power play goal from Joe Veleno. Kane got the secondary assist on that one. Veleno did a good job to find Raymond in the slot, and then Raymond ended up dishing it to Fabbri in front to go up 5-4, and that was ultimately the winning goal. Robbie Fabbri, I see, has continued putting out the good word and making me look smart for saying, shut up about Robbie Fabbri. He's good when he's healthy, because he's good when he's healthy. I think I just have an affinity for players who wear the number 14. I'm a big Derek Meach guy. And then you almost never cover empty netters, but Joe Veleno outworking St. Louis, who was on the power play with an empty net, 6-on-4, outworked Chiarot along the boards, battled, stripped him of the puck, cleared it down. Rasmussen skated hard to clean it up and get the empty net goal. That was massive. Joe Veleno, good on Rasmussen to go down there and skate hard and actually capitalize on the goal. But Joe Veleno, man, what a season he's been having.
That description doesn't even do it justice, because that wasn't a 50-50 puck.
No, it was
Veleno looked like he just decided, all right, enough of this. I'm going to get it now. You have it now, but that's mine.
That play got Craig Berube fired.
Almost literally. And yeah, set up Rasmussen for the gimme. Veleno he might be the best story of the Red Wings this year. I know his counting totals aren't stellar, but they're a huge improvement on last year. He's on pace to smash last year's point total. He's got 12 points in 28 games, so he's creeping up on a half a point per game. And if Joe Veleno can ever get to a 40-point pace, which I think is very much in the cards for him now, maybe not this season, but the way he's ramping up next year, he is such a Swiss Army knife in this roster. Top line left wing, second line center, first line center last night. He played more minutes than any Red Wing.
It was like 23 minutes.
Yeah, I think Max quoted that in his article, that Joe Veleno played more than any Red Wing last night. Like Alex DeBrincat, Patrick Kane, Mo Seider. Nope, Joe Veleno.
That is massive trust to get from this coaching staff.
You need someone to fill in on the power play. Veleno can do it. Got a primary power play assist. Penalty kill, he's got you. Big defensive zone situation. Yep, throw Joe Veleno out there. Need a goal? Hey, yeah, maybe throw Joe Veleno out there.
Those types of guys carve long NHL careers.
Yeah.
And we've talked since the day he was drafted, Joe Veleno takes a while to get it at every level of hockey he's ever played. But eventually, he gets it. I think we're really seeing the Joe Veleno understands what it is to be a successful NHLer now, because what hole can you poke in his game over the last little while or this season?
Joe Veleno's 23 years old. He had just the 1-year contract extension. He's an ARB-eligible RFA at the end of the year. I would honestly love to see a medium to long-term extension for him. Do the old Tampa Bay Classic, like long-term, low money.
The Nick Paul contract.
Yeah.
Let's give him 7 years at $2 million.
I'm all for it, honestly. You described it perfectly, Brad. Like, he's not going to all of a sudden flourish into an 80-point guy, no, but he's been steady. Like, you give him the opportunity, this guy works. He works so damn hard, and the results are there. You need players like him in your lineup in situations like when the Red Wings are in now, where they have a lot of holes that need to be plugged because of injury or suspension or whatever. And even when they're healthy, to have him in your bottom six, like that's an all tools, all situation guy who is integral for a team who's good up and down the lineup. Bring me Joe Veleno long term. I'm sold on it. That's not a question for me anymore. I understand that we're just over a quarter of the way into the season, but all he's shown since he's been at the Red Wings is that if he's given the runway and the opportunity to work, he is going to put in the work and he does get better. Even if it's not, astronomical leaps in form, like he is a steady Eddie as much as they come.
He has leapfrogged.
I believe it's lepted.
The lepted frogged, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the lepted.
That's staying in.
I love it. He has leapfrogged a lot of guys on this roster for now and going forward.
And that's not an easy feat. Like, look at someone in Berggren's situation, and he might be not part of the future for the Red Wings, good though he is offensively. Look at someone in Michael Rasmussen's situation.
I will not hear the 1 point greater than Joe Veleno, Michael Rasmussen, be assaulted on this podcast. I will not have it.
Listen, I love Michael Rasmussen, but I will comfortably say Joe Veleno is now better and will continue to be better than Michael Rasmussen.
Only time will tell.
And here I am.
And at this point in time, the counting stats say no.
Here I am holding the standard bearer for Robbie Fabbri. We've all picked very unique players to die on hills for.
I think the counting stats for Veleno are better.
They play the same games played, and Rasmussen has one more point.
Oh, does he? Okay.
Evan came.
He's
prepared. He's dressed business casual.
Do I look like a person who would lie? Yes. Yes, I do.
You are dressed like a car salesman right now.
I was literally going to make the joke. I feel like he's about to sell me a 2002 Pontiac Grand Am.
And you'll
Fortunately for me, that's a very easy sell these days, given the market.
He's convincing. I would probably buy it.
The Red Wings beat the Blues 6-4. Veleno helped seal it. Great game for him. And Detroit helped stem the bleeding a little bit. They stopped a losing skid and were able to pull a win out without Larkin, without Compher, without Perron. And they are still currently in a wild card spot right now by points percentage, although it's getting... They're still 6-3-1 in their last 10. Like, we're talking, the defense is so bad and things are going so terrible. We're looking at this because of what happened with San Jose and then the loss against Ottawa. Those are two rough outcomes. I agree. But then the Dallas game, considering the lineup they had, that's kind of as expected.
Yeah, see, Ryan, this is why we need Ryan back. He's the 6-3-1 in their last 10 guy. I'm the 1-2-1 in their last 4 guy.
That's right. I mean, the schedule's not getting easier. They have Carolina on Thursday and then Philly on Saturday in Philly, and Philly's been a surprisingly good team this season. So it's not going to be, Detroit's just going to bound back into form. Decembers have been tough for them in recent years, and so they have to do everything they can to not let this get bad. But last night was a crucial victory, even when things weren't pretty. And things aren't going to be pretty for the next little while for Detroit.
Is the game against Philly, do we call that the unsustainable?
Is Philly unsustainable at this point?
I'm surprised the Red Wings are holding up, and I'm very pleasantly surprised, especially with the injuries. But Philly, yeah, I feel like it's unsustainable.
Travis Konechny has been an absolute warrior this season so far, by the sounds of it.
He's when he was on the potential trade block, I can see why Philly was disinterested in moving him. He's just a guy.
Real meat and potatoes and some serious skill.
Yeah. So that was Detroit's win over St. Louis. That's where they are in the standings right now, and those were their upcoming games. We already mentioned one of the individual storylines in Joe Veleno, but before we get into the rest, let's mention David Perron.
Why? What happened?
Oh, he took a lot of strides according to the NHL. Player safety loved counting strides. Look, I saw that, and my reaction was, in the heat of the moment, seeing where Zub was standing and based on all the context of what's happened with Larkin in the past, I know it was unfair to Zub, and I do feel bad for him, and it was absolutely, this doesn't absolve Perron of what he did, but you had to do something. Like, that was just what you had to do.
Don't stand over a crime scene. That's what I learned.
Anyhow, Perron got a 6-game suspension from the NHL, and I saw that and I thought two things. One, within range, a bit heavy. I was expecting, honestly, 4 or 5, but 6. If you look at that play objectively, if someone did that to a Red Wings player, you'd want that much. And so I thought,
we'd be losing our absolute minds.
Yeah, if it wasn't that. So that was... I felt it was fair for the play individually, and it's not the Department of Player Safety's job to say, within the emotional context of the game. No, that's for us to talk about on this podcast. They actually have to dole out the suspension based on the play. And I appreciated that from a neutral lens. And then 2, I thought there is enough context here where I can see this being pushed back and Perron appealing, and that's what he's doing.
As soon as I saw 6, I knew for a fact that the NHL, even if David Perron didn't want to do this, and he probably still does feel terrible for doing it, you knew for sure Alan Walsh and the NHLPA would be 100% appealing the suspension.
Yeah.
And for as emotional as Alan Walsh was on Twitter, his opinion was objectively correct.
I loved it.
Because I love when people get petty and bring the receipts. Huge fan.
Oh, yeah.
But in this context, and, you know, I know I already kind of tweeted about it, but to reiterate for those who don't follow me, which is most of you, wisely. 6 games for the action, in my mind, is objectively correct. You cross-checked a guy in the head. 6 games, I'm fully on board with that. I agree with this suspension 1,000%.
He's lucky he didn't catch teeth or anything, because you would have been looking at 10, 15. Like if Zoo was out for a while.
Yeah. Well, but getting to the big old but here, this hasn't been the standard for this type of action. We have seen many cross checks to the face suspended in the NHL, and they've all been 1, 2, or 3 games. Why Alan Walsh is angry and why he was correct in his Twitter tirade was he was throwing out videos and examples of other, some would argue in some of those instances, worse cross-checks that got a lesser suspension. So my opinion on this is almost incomplete, because if this is the new standard suspension for a cross-check to the face, I am very okay with it. I'll be upset that a Red Wing was the first one, but if, you know, say some dude on Montreal cross-checks some dude in Columbus on the face next week, and he gets 6 games, and then the next guy that does it gets, 5, 6, or 7, okay. I am very okay with this, because that's what the punishment should be. If the next guy gets 2 or 3 games again, I'm furious, because why is this one any different? Where this one had more context, where it's, you're right in that it shouldn't affect the suspension, but you can at least understand why Perron did it, which isn't always the case in instances like this. So again, my opinion is, if this is the new standard for this action, fair, totally fair. If it's not, the anger level will be very high.
We'll have Alan Walsh on the podcast.
That's right. Yeah. Well, we're actually overdue. We should invite him on. But the 2 main plays that are being drawn up, one is Evgeny Malkin cross-checking Boro last season.
Borowiecki.
He got 4 games for that. And Matthews on Dahlin, which I think was a 2-game suspension. The context is different. Again, the NHL.
Yes, Malkin and Matthews are stars.
Hey, listen. Best puck protector in the league, David Perron. No, but it's a good point. And when people say that doesn't exist, yeah, my ass. It absolutely, star protection does exist with Evgeny Malkin. Look no further than 2009. I'm sorry for bringing it up. I digress. The 4-game and the 2-game suspension there is going to be pointed to. The Department of Player Safety will say, well, no, Perron skated out of his way, took strides. Again, they were counting strides, and engaged in someone who was not engaged in anything that had happened in an act of retribution. So the process is, because it was a 5 or more game suspension, it first goes to Gary Bettman. And then if he, they want to appeal further, and let's say he doesn't change anything, then they can go to a neutral third party arbitrator, and they'll decide. So I'm going to guess here that they might get it down a game or 2. Just
not
because
through Gary Bettman.
This is all a guess, but I'm inclined to agree with you, Evan. I would say Bettman will say, no, I'm not changing this because we want to hold the standard. And a third party arbitrator will say, you have a 2 and a 4. I agree this is worse, but is it 4 games worse than Matthews? Is it 2 games worse than Malkin? That's hard to say. I would imagine it gets knocked down to 5 or 4.
Believe it or not, I was listening to the intermission on ESPN last night, and they had Gary Bettman on, and he was basically saying he has the utmost confidence in the Department of Player Safety. So if he reduces that suspension now, I will be absolutely shocked, because then he's really making a statement that he doesn't believe in that department, which, based on that statement, I don't think he'll change it at all.
And he knows he has cover behind him, right? He knows it'll get appealed further, and if they reduce it, then he doesn't.
He's like, oh, well, I still believe in the suspension, but you know, we've got arbitration process in the CBA for a reason.
Yep, pretty much. I will say the Department of Player Safety has surprised me a few times this season in terms of getting it right, but in terms of functions of the NHL that require subjective analysis, it is one of the least reliable and most questionable in terms of how they conduct themselves. So Gary Bettman saying the company line, that's what it's his job to do, of course, but I think the Department of Player Safety gets it wrong so often. There's a reason it's a joke. Like it's a running meme. So I don't know, like I think the way you phrased it, Brad, it's exactly right. Like objectively, yeah, it's a correct call, but the precedent is there, the standard is there, and I'm glad the NHLPA and Perron are advocating for this. And from a Red Wings perspective, like you can only take so many hits to your roster. We don't want the Decembers to get ugly arbitrarily. So if you can get Perron back sooner, that's great. I got some questions about the suspension. While this is being appealed, he is still out. So Perron isn't, they're not staying the suspension. He's still out while they do this, but they will kind of move it forward pretty promptly so that any time served does count towards the suspension, but they won't want it to run too long, because if they reduce it, they want him to actually be able to come back in the time that it was reduced to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's not like he misses 5 games and they're like, oh, it's actually a 4-game suspension. It's like, well, thanks for nothing.
Someone was like, I bet the NHL is going to do that. They tweeted at us. I was like, I don't know. They'll move these things forward. They do.
They're not a government body. They move a little bit quicker.
That's right. Yeah, not local government.
Unless you owe them taxes, and then you get it immediately.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit more about Berggren. I actually wanted to come on to this episode and talk about everything that I missed, but I know part of detaching and letting go and actually enjoying a vacation means that I just have to hand over the reins, but I do want to talk about Berggren.
I will, if you want to rehash stuff, I'm sure Evan and I will be happy to talk about our love for violence again.
Yeah, you guys did do that. We got some.
It actually was far more measured than it usually was. I was extremely hungover.
Oh.
So once again, I was putting the tracks down and crossing them at the same time, but it was far more measured than what the discourse was online. It was far more measured than that.
Yeah, that's
Evan's able to describe it as measured, and I use the phrase punch him in the face till your hand breaks. So that feels like a true accomplishment.
It's measuring something.
Jonatan Berggren and the supposed trade rumors that came up. His name, I think it was Pagnotta, tweeted out that his name has been floating around trade conversations as Steve Yzerman looks to do something. I saw that, and a couple thoughts ran through my mind. First was that this isn't, true or not, or substantial or not. It's not surprising that if there are hypothetical or low-level trade conversations happening, and spoiler, it happens constantly throughout the league. Like, you'd be shocked how often GMs just casually talk to each other about, oh, hey, I really like Scandella. And
how long has Nick Robertson been on the chopping block?
Yeah. Other teams' players are in the names of other GMs' mouths every single day, 10 times a day. It's just how the league works. And so Berggren, who is a player who is attractive to some degree, he has offensive ability, he's shown that he can score, hasn't been able to crack the Red Wings roster because Detroit doesn't feel his physical game and ability to hang with NHL physicality and, win battles and, play the Red Wings way was enough to get him a roster spot. A lot of that adds up. We speculated at the beginning of the season. He might be a guy, if he can't make it in, that the Red Wings take advantage of his value now and flip him for something that they see useful on the roster, or he's part of a package deal or whatever. So that was the first thing. And the second thing I thought was, I get it, but I really want to see what he is and if he can fit into this roster longer term. Like, I get the limitations in his play, and I'm not sure that he'll be able to overcome them long term, but he is a guy who has a nose for the net, who can know where to be to bang in the kind of goals that win you games, and he has offensive ability. And I can no longer parrot out the line that the Red Wings can't score; they need the help. They're the second highest scoring team in the league. But you call Berggren up; he has 2 goals in 2 games. I think he can be of some value in a depth role for Detroit.
On talent, he's definitely one of the top 12 forwards in this organization. Full stop. I think the issue comes down to the style they want to play, and he doesn't fit that, mold of what Yzerman's looking for in a player, for better or worse, especially paying attention to the draft, Yzerman has left a lot of talent on the board because he has his type. You look at Edvinsson, Kasper, Danielson the last 3 years. What do they all have in common? None of them are small. They play 200-foot games. That pro style type of hockey. They've got some edge to them. And, however you want to play the game, they can play it. Now, can a guy like Marco Kasper play it to the talent level of a Jonatan Berggren? No. But he has that style. And Berggren, frankly, doesn't. He is a small, I'm going to use the term soft, but not in a negative way. It's not like he's afraid of contact or anything like that, but he's not winning many physical battles. He's not intimidating. He's not
a bruiser.
Yeah, exactly. He's not going to fill that role for you. He's a specialist if he was on this team. And does he produce enough to be that specialist like an Alex DeBrincat or a Patrick Kane? And to this point, the answer is no. And he's 23. It's not like, he's got so much room to grow from where he is now. Most of the time, players at this age, they are what they are. You're going to get some improvement, but not by leaps and bounds. So Berggren is probably at his peak a 40-ish point small playmaking winger who can knock in a bunch of goals.
I fully agree. I think that's what he most likely is.
And for the style of team Yzerman's building, I could see him not loving that. And that's not a knock on Berggren. Teams who play that style, he would fit in real well. That's not Detroit right now. So as much as I like the guy and as much as I personally would keep him on this team and would keep him in the middle six and give him a shot, I see why he might be on the outs here.
If that's what we think he is, and I just said I agree, and I do, then, it does make sense for this to be part of the conversation. I'm not a jettison him at all costs kind of guy, is I guess what I'm trying to come to a conclusion here with. I don't think we should just be moving him out because he's not necessarily fitting the mold of what the Red Wings need right now. Because I think, like you mentioned, Brad, that has value across the league. He's not going to be a superstar, sure, but he has the offensive ability. I would love to see a world where Detroit can keep him up. And, if you want to keep him up just to see where he is and pump up trade value, great. Or you keep him up and see if he can excel and thrive a little bit more in the role. I understand that he has to earn it, and has he necessarily over other guys in the Red Wings forward group? That's a tough sell. The forward group is largely doing well offensively. But it shouldn't be a knock on him because he is, projected to be this middle six winger who is a little bit of an offensive specialist and not necessarily winning the physical type that Steve Yzerman wants.
Yeah, it's kind of a chicken and an egg thing. It's like, okay, if he can score 60 points, 50 points, he'll be an everyday player in this lineup. But he's got to be in the lineup to do that, but he doesn't play the style the team wants, so you can't really get the sample size to see if he can do that, even though he had a great season last year. So, I do feel for Berggren in this situation. Like, I believe the same as you guys, that has a potential to be a middle six forward on this team, but it all depends on how he fits as a puzzle piece into the picture.
And one thing I'll disagree on is I don't think I think 23, yeah, like you're not going to see him step up several tiers in terms of being an upper echelon player. But
he was injured a lot too, right? Like his development has been stunted, whether that's, his ceiling or the timeline for him to get to his ceiling has been altered because of that.
I want to see him get more runway. I would love to see a world where, Robbie Fabbri is not going to be on the Red Wings forever, for example. Is that your future Robbie Fabbri? You need those guys.
Well, I thought that's why we made him half man, half machine, so he could be on the Red Wings for forever.
We now have to petition the NHL and the next CBA to allow 13-year contracts for cyborgs only.
Exactly.
Anyhow, we'll see where the Berggren one goes. I tried picking around a little bit. I couldn't find too much in terms of actual substance for trades, other than, it gets talked about. So we'll see. Overall thoughts on Patrick Kane? A couple more games in terms of him playing. Where do you feel his limitations are? How do you think he's playing? What's the sense? He did score, which you guys covered last episode, but how do you feel that Patrick Kane is kind of getting up to speed?
He looks good. I don't think any of us expected him to come in and be the Patrick Kane of old, which he certainly isn't. But he's, 2 points in 4 games. He's snapping the puck around there. You can see the chemistry with DeBrincat. He looks like what I was hoping he would look like. You get Larkin back and Compher back, and those counting stats probably go up a little bit when he gets a little more support. But yeah, considering everything he's went through, and Evan and I talked about this obviously on Sunday, but yeah, he looks good. I'm happy. I'm whelmed. I think he looks like a very good, usable second line forward right now.
Will he be the best American player of all time? Maybe not. Who knows? He's got a lot of career left in him. That's for time to tell. But in all seriousness, I am shocked how much he's going into traffic and knifing through players as much as he does, given the surgery he's had, because you'd think contact would be the last thing that a guy like him would be looking for. But man, you can just tell Patrick Kane, we've hated him for so long, so saying these words are so weird, but you can just tell that he is a special player and how he does things on the ice, because nobody seems to do it the same way as him.
Some things that I've noticed which have led to maybe limitations in his game, or a play kind of fizzles out when you're excited that the puck is on his stick. A lot of it, I look at it and I'm like, that's a guy who's not played at NHL speed and strength for many months. And that's just the reality of someone who's had the procedures he's had. And you can stay in really great shape and rehab as well as you possibly can, and have access to revolutionary, medical procedures and the best doctors that all of the many dollars that you've earned can buy you. But at the end of the day, you still have to build up the kind of strength that only can be tested and built with an NHL season. So I'm also wondering, which is a ridiculous thing to say about a guy his age, but I'm wondering if over the course of a season, the rest of this year, that you're going to see him even improve and get substantially better and do some things more, like get some more oomph behind his shot and be a little stronger on the puck. So, but yeah, all in all, pretty pleased. And it was thrilling to see that he scored his first goal. So that was cool. Some other light Red Wings news. Nate Danielson, unsurprisingly, announced as a member of Team Canada for the upcoming World Juniors. So of all the Red Wings prospects, I know all eyes are largely on Nate Danielson.
Is there a 14-year-old on the Brandon Wheat Kings?
There was a 14-year-old that was called up. That was a unique circumstance, but
he can only play 5 games, right?
Yeah, he can only play 5 games, and even though he's 14, he is a 2008 birthday, so he's just has a December birthday, so he's almost 15. So it's this really unique circumstance where he could start his 5 games at 14 years old, scored 2 goals. I don't remember his last name, but he's from the Western Hockey League, so of course his name is Jackson with an X. And it was, that was such a super cool story. How often are you ever going to see that?
They were good goals too. They weren't just like tap-ins at the side of the net. They were, high skill type goals.
Jackson Jacobson.
Yeah, it's the most Western Hockey League name
JJ.
I've ever heard.
That's right. I saw a 14-year-old score twice in the Western Hockey League. I went, oh my God, I'm in the dirt, bro.
And then you see a picture of him, and I'm like, that is a baby.
He scored twice.
You imagine your 14-year-old kid is playing in that league, and there's mutants like the one guy, Schmidt, on Kitchener Rangers.
Former Kitchener Ranger.
Yeah.
Got traded to Kingston today.
They're huge. They got full-on beards, and this kid hasn't even been to a school dance yet.
He's literally in grade 9.
Oh, God. We're doing nothing with our lives. Anyhow, good for you, Jackson. Let's get into some NHL news here before I start to get sad. The All-Star Game is seeing some changes, and apparently Connor McDavid consulted quite a bit on what this might look like. I just want to say,
God, is that good or bad?
Every event is just fastest skating with a big money prize.
I want to say, we applaud Connor Bedard, and oh my God, you see that shot against
shot
Edmonton?
it off his
that
toes.
Was gross.
His stick was on his toes when he released the puck.
I have never once in my life shot a puck that well, and with all the time and space in the world to actually wind up the shot. And anyways, so we give a lot of credit to Connor Bedard for going through the paces and really trying to engage and be a presence in terms of like hockey fandom and media and embracing what the NHL wants him to be, which is the future face of the league. Connor McDavid, I think, has been doing that a lot more lately too. So when they went to him and said, we need your advice on how to fix the All-Star game, and for him to actually be part of that, that's good for the sport. Like, that's what you need. Yeah, it's good. What do you mean?
So what does Connor McDavid have in mind that would make the All-Star game more entertaining?
I'll tell you in just a second.
Okay. Yeah, please do.
Because I'm with Evan. I could see McDavid going, all right, here's my event. Fastest skater, clockwise. Fastest skater, counterclockwise.
No, because you know who's making these decisions, if not Connor McDavid, is just like the typical talking heads at the NHL.
Ryan, I'm aware both options are bad.
No, I don't think the McDavid...
No, I know. McDavid, it is good to get a hockey player's perspective. I do genuinely think this is a step in the right direction, though, because most people who watch hockey are involved in hockey in some way. So if you're asking people who play hockey at the highest level, what would you want to watch?
Yeah.
That's a step in the right direction.
I also think I know what you're about to get to. Another angle that you can look at it is, what do the players want so that they actually attend? Because all of them are like, oh, we get another day off if we don't attend. Sign me up.
So, and another thing that they get is a substantial amount of money.
That is always the answer.
So what it is the All-Star game will be selected, and there will be, a bunch of players who are going to the actual All-Star game. They'll be part of All-Star weekend.
They're doing a draft, right?
They're doing a draft, which I love.
But they cut off the most fun part.
Which was the last player pick.
The last player. The last 4 players left just get randomly assigned to a team.
Which I think is just the most chicken shit. These guys are in the NHL. Just let them get picked last. Who cares?
That's like when people complain that the team puts out their first power play when it's like 4-1. It's like, put your big boy pants on.
For a league that goes out of their way to brag that their players are the toughest in all of sports over and over again, they sure do get their feelings hurt pretty easy.
A bunch of snowflakes. That's right. So that's all well and good. All the players will be selected for the All-Star game. A dozen players, 12 specific players, will be chosen for the skills competition, where
they're only there for the skills event.
No, of the main All-Star group. So
I'm listening to you. I'm envisioning it in my mind. Keep going.
So of the players selected to be NHL All-Stars, 12 of them are going to be part of the All-Star skills event. 8 of those 12 will be determined by the NHL Hockey Ops Department, and 4 of them, and the NHLPA, and 4 of them will be fan votes of the actual pool. Don't interrupt me, or I'm pulling the trapdoor beneath your chair, damn it. These 12 players are going to compete in 8 events: fastest skater, hardest shot, stick handling, one-timers, passing challenge, accuracy shooting, the NHL shootout, and the NHL obstacle course. And the last 2 are top 8 and top 6 players. Whatever. They're going to accumulate points. The winner gets $1 million.
Holy shit. They're going to have to send this to NASA between rounds to calculate.
Hold on, though. This, just on that concept, does sound like it solves the biggest problem the skills competition's had in the last few years, which is so much dead time.
Yeah.
There are so many damn events. They are going to have to be hammering these out quickly, and I like that.
Yeah. And you know what? The fact that they're actually scoring points and there's a prize at the end means it's not going to be so like laissez-faire, and it's going to be a little bit more structured.
And if I'm hearing this right, all 12 players compete in every event?
No.
Because they got to accumulate points? How does that work?
Get the whiteboard out. We need a whiteboard.
Can the NHL make anything simple?
We need a whiteboard. Ryan tried to sell this at this great thing, and I'm totally lost on what's being done.
Are there who gets the $1 million? If there's $1 million on the line and I have to accumulate points, I want to be in every damn event. I don't care if I finish 11th out of 12th in fastest skater.
So after the first 6 events, after the accuracy shooting, the 4 lowest point earners will be eliminated, which leaves 8 players.
Hold on. Does that hurt their feelings, though?
Well,
do they get participation ribbons?
They will. You know what? They're going to distract them with an ice-cold Labatt Blue light.
You know what? I'd try to lose at that point.
Yeah. The 8 remaining players will compete in the NHL Shootout Challenge. The 2 lowest point accumulators after that will be eliminated, which leaves 6 players for the NHL Obstacle Course. So we're
finding basically the greatest all-star.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, by process of elimination. So we did lose
the simplicity of the matter, but this does sound more fun. But I'm going to circle back to something that we talked about at the beginning of this conversation. The NHL consulted Connor McDavid on how to fix the skills competition, and they basically created something that's going to earn Connor McDavid $1 million.
He was going to earn it anyways. He's a human cheat code.
That's good for him.
Yeah.
I would rig it to be hot dog eating contest. And
you just watched Shohei Ohtani sign a $700 quadrillion contract, and you were earning the ire of the league because you were the original guy to earn 12.5 or whatever. Get your money, Connor. Get that extra $1 million.
What I really want in this, how the NHL should construct these 12 players is it should be all the guys on like their entry level contract still, or on their bridge, so that money actually means something to them. We're watching, Mo Seider Superman dive to win a race because he's still making $987 a year.
Yeah, that's right. Well, one wrinkle I do like is in the shootout challenge, the players can pick the goalie they're shooting on.
Oh,
I love that.
That's nice.
Yeah, which is cool.
I wonder how many of them will pick their own goalie.
I want every one of them to, if it's an option.
Obviously, that wouldn't be possible. They wouldn't send that many goalies, right?
No, well,
Connor McDavid won't be shooting on one of his own goalies for sure.
Yeah, that is true. Unless Jack Campbell has the biggest turnaround of turnarounds.
Anyhow, very obviously there's still some things to figure out based on how long it took us to get through this.
Typical NHL.
Hopefully
making anything
hopefully that
simple.
building is 100 floors tall because that elevator pitch is tough.
Should I go back on vacation?
No, this is great.
I'm picturing it in my head what the event's going to look like, and I think I like it. But yeah, it's a little convoluted for your average fan and my dumbass. So.
And for the 10-year-old kids who they probably don't care. They just want to see the NHL stars anyway.
Shoot hard, skate fast. Look, this is great. I like what I've seen actual like on ice wise, but it all boils down to, are you going to make this thing move at a pace that keeps people tuned in and not falling asleep on the couch? Because like you said, Brad, a bunch of dead time. And I think you've alluded to this, Evan. You need to structure it and show it to people in a way that's digestible and you can understand what's happening.
Like every great plan, it comes down to execution.
That's right. I feel like we're going to be talking a lot about that.
My brain just melted trying to figure that out.
We have to kind of collect Evan and put him back together. So on future episodes, we'll talk more about the All-Star game, more NHL news. We alluded to it at the top of the show, but the Red Wings got another coach fired. First it was Dean Evason after beating Minnesota, and then Craig Berube after beating St. Louis. So we joked about it that Veleno's stripping Kyrou of the puck, lost Berube his job. But yeah, St. Louis relieved him of his duties. Armstrong has some interesting quotes in the media today about being hit by a bus, and
that was actually kind of heartbreaking.
It was, yeah.
Who was hit by a bus?
So Doug Armstrong had a quote saying, if I got hit by a bus in an hour, am I leaving this team in a better position than I inherited them in? And he said, no, I'm not. And someone actually looked it up. And yeah, points percentage the year he took over to now is identical. But it's like, buddy, you got them their first ever Stanley Cup. You can feel good about yourself even if you get fired today.
With this firing, though, I kind of look at St. Louis and I'm like, that's not a team that's really positioned to be doing a lot more than what they've done so far, though.
No, they are this bad this year, and it is Doug Armstrong's fault. I'm not saying he should be absolved.
No.
Just the quote made me sad because he's got St. Louis their only cup. But this is the rare coach firing where their starting goalie has at least league average save percentage.
Yeah, Bennington's not been that bad.
Yeah, he's not been an all-star, but he's been okay. He's been pretty good. So you look at that St. Louis defense, though, and those contracts, and yeah, I don't think this falls at the feet of Berube.
I think he'll have a job as soon as he wants one. He's joining Woodcroft for me in terms of guys who won't really find a lot of trouble finding work.
DJ Smith lives another day.
Hey, maybe not that Detroit.
That's why the Red Wings lost to Ottawa, to be honest.
They want to keep DJ Smith there. That's very smart.
Long-term play.
You lose those games, but then Ottawa goes out and loses a bunch more.
Yep.
And Ottawa fans, man, I outside of the context of any interaction with Detroit, because like you mentioned, it's been very civil online. But Ottawa fans, if you just see what they are feeling about DJ Smith right now, like it is a loud and getting louder chorus of people looking for them to move on from DJ Smith.
Oh, you're telling me the Ottawa fans are unhappy?
Good. Brad stoking the flames. Jakub Vrana, speaking of St. Louis, on the outs. This cycle has kind of repeated what you saw in Washington, what you saw in Detroit. Obviously, not completely the same as Detroit with the context of him going into the Players Assistance Program when he was with Detroit, but the St. Louis Blues are just, he's not finding his spot there. And the story here is I look at a guy with so much offensive talent, and it's one of those, it's a shame is what it is. It's like you want to see him be able to put it together and do the things that his coaches want him to do, that his teammates want him to do, that he's just not been able to kind of make it stick anywhere he's been. So we'll see what's next. I'm sure he'll have interest because he's a guy with a ton of talent, and a lot of teams will maybe look at that and say, I can find an opportunity to make this work. But as of now, he cleared waivers. So
San Jose, come on down.
Yeah, maybe. But
San Jose's third from last in the NHL right now, by the way.
Yeah, they're ruining it. Chicago's going to get Celebrini, and San Jose's going to ruin it for everyone.
Remember that heater the Ducks were on? They're behind San Jose now.
Yeah. But, we've said this before. The Mantha Vrana trade has looked to be just an ultimate lose-lose trade. Well, maybe Mantha's scoring a bit more now, but I don't know. That's just gone completely sideways.
We still have Kosa.
Speaking of Washington, they have 2 arenas, potentially.
Did this come out of nowhere to anyone else?
It was very underreported. So an ultra simple explanation of what's happening right now is Washington plays, downtown DC, and essentially Virginia is luring them away. They're moving not far geographically, but within the dense, very heavily trafficked area of the DC and surrounding areas. Like, it is a long commute to get from where they are now to where they're proposed to move them, which is, I think, maybe like 4 miles or something is what Gary Bettman said to make it. He was, playing an angle there, but they're moving him to Virginia, not far geographically, but it presents a move from a central downtown core to like the fringes of their metro line, for example. And it's because they're going to have a lot of wide open space, a brand new structure. They're going to move them there. They're going to move the Wizards there. All of this tentative. The governor of Virginia is kind of luring them over with a ton of money, public subsidy, etc. So, if you're the owner of the Washington Capitals, you're seeing this. You're seeing a arena you're playing right now in downtown DC that needs a lot of updates. Apparently, they don't view the area that they're in right now as the most desirable. It kind of went wayward after COVID started, and they're having a hard time trying to kind of recover that region. You can see why they're making the move, but I've also seen a massive chorus from people in and around the DC area saying this is worse for fans to be able to get to games, and this is going to suck. So that one's it's proposed for 2028. And DC themselves have put out legislation or an announcement for legislation for money to fund the renovation of the current arena in downtown DC. So it's all a political game right now. I believe it's supposed to go through the Virginia legislature. So we'll see what actually happens here, but it's a big power pull. But I know the Ted Leonsis will want to make the move, the owner of the Capitals. The NHL will support it because it's a ton of public money for an arena, a new arena. But I don't know. I always like arenas that are actually in downtown cores. So this one doesn't. I hope things change and they can make it work where they are.
Nobody's thinking outside the box here. There's such an obvious solution. The Virginia Capitals, the Washington Coyotes.
My God, it was there the whole time.
That's right. The metro system there is like it's going to be so relied upon by the metro system. Like, it just gets gridlocked, those streets, so fast during rush hour. So that they're going to have to make this work in terms of actual public transportation. Otherwise, I don't know, moving your team away from where the people are, even if it's just a few stops or a couple lines away, I'm sure
it always works out for the best.
It's like going from Mississauga to Toronto. Yes, those cities are connected. That will take an hour and a half.
Yeah, that's right.
On a good day.
Arizona. You know what? You made the Arizona joke. Does it hurt a little bit to see 2 arenas for one team and Arizona still doesn't have necessarily one? Although they have put out some statements of intent, which are, just as good as arenas.
Hurt? No. Hilarious? Yes.
There's the only winners of arena conversations are the people who own them and the billionaires and the millionaires who get to play in them. Like, the economy or the data shows that there's no benefit to the tax base for these arenas. So I hate these
for them to be funding it.
Yeah. There's for them to fund these. There's no trickle down back into the local economy. Like, as a sports fan, I used to, like, as a young, naive sports fan, I'd be like, yes, new arena, this is the greatest thing ever. As now that I pay taxes, I'm like, the only people this is benefiting is the NHL, the people who are getting the contracts to build the arena, and the billionaires. Like,
It could backfire on the owner, though, because look at what happened in Phoenix when the Coyotes did not play in Phoenix. Look at what's going on in Ottawa right now, where they don't play in Ottawa. They play outside of Ottawa.
Geographically, much smaller distance we're talking about here, but
if you lose it, if enough people are going, I'm not dealing with that traffic or that commute, and just
don't go.
And the Capitals are
not a good team right now.
They are not in a position where
2028 we'll see, but yeah, go ahead.
Well, they're just entering the rebuild by that point, probably, because they're going to hang on for a bit to try to get over his record. So this could be risky.
And I don't know what makeup of their season tickets are corporate sponsors too. And, being in the downtown core lures a lot of corporate sponsorship. Just look at the Leafs, for example. It might be a little bit more difficult to make those sorts of sales, I'll call them sponsorships, when you're slightly further and away from where their target market might be.
They are going to lose so many lobbyist seats.
No, they're just as present in Virginia, like right where they're talking about. But yeah, I understand what you're saying. You see that poke check by Kochetkov on Tkachuk in the subsequent almost fight after that penalty shot?
Work of art. Love it. 10 out of 10. Do it again.
It's funny because I saw it. I'm like, yeah, I understand why Tkachuk was pissed. Like,
keep your head up. It's a penalty shot.
No, okay, but Kochetkov stick wasn't at his stick blade. Like, that wasn't. He didn't get the puck. He wasn't even close to the puck. He got Tkachuk's foot.
Keep your head up. If Tkachuk cuts left, it's an open net.
Ref should give him another penalty shot.
Yeah, I'm very for that too.
Taken down on a breakaway.
You trip a guy on a penalty shot, give him another penalty shot.
Endless penalty shots. Hell yeah.
Keep giving him shots till he gets a shot. I don't care. Get weird. Get aggressive. I love it.
Kochekov's no stranger to getting in scrums. I think it's hilarious watching Brady Tkachuk. Like, the amount of videos of him whining like he's Patrick Mahomes after losing a game to being offside. That's a little Bills reference for you there, Brad.
Thank you. That memory does bring me joy.
Like, he's all over to the point where people don't give him the benefit of the doubt anymore. You're just like, oh my God, he's being a piss baby. He's trying to fight everyone. But I saw the replay. I'm like, oh yeah, I'd be pissed too. But it was hilarious. As a neutral observer, you watch that, you're like, hell yeah, keep doing that.
Oh, a somewhat neutral observer.
That's right, yeah. Honestly, and if you're a Sens fan, you have to appreciate what Dominik Hasek did in the past. So you do have to look at that and go, that kind of rules.
Well, Ottawa has such fond memories of Dominik Hasek's time there.
That's right. And then, Evan, you actually brought up before that Lindgren hit by Jake McCabe. That was on.
If you play in the National Hockey League, you should not watch your passes. Can't believe I have to say that.
Oh my God.
That guy looked backward. Lindgren looked backwards on his drop pass and got absolutely buried. I can't believe an NHL player has to be told that.
Ryan, did you see this? He went full Don Cherry.
Yeah,
he was doing the table piano while
test,
talking about
probably because he's got his
up.
Yofa on and he can't see because he's got a tinted visor.
Oh my God!
Probably wouldn't have done that if he didn't have a visor on.
And that's a Rock'em Sock'em hockey hit.
Oh,
and
1,000%.
And after they showed that hit, they would have cut to Don Cherry talking about, all right, kids, this is why you keep your head up.
That was a monstrous hit.
It was as clean as they come, too.
That would have hurt so bad.
God. And you could tell Lindgren, he popped up pretty quick, but then he saw his scrum and it was just kind of like, I don't have everything back together yet to be getting this. It kind of sauntered away.
If someone touches me right now, I'm turning into a cloud of dust.
Yeah. You have iPads on the bench for you to get that replay instantaneously. You do not need to be watching your pass in that moment.
And it wasn't even a good pass. It was just a classic gain the line, drop, push the D back and make a drop pass, and he got absolutely buried for it.
Oh my God. that's between the Kochetkov Pochek and that hit. That's classic hockey.
It's been
right
a
there.
violent couple weeks in the NHL.
Yeah. We haven't even talked about Goodbranson and Cousins.
Oh, yeah, and all the other guys who got boarded with varying degrees of penalties for some reason.
I feel like it'll be a fuller topic on a future episode. We'll see what happens after the Perron appeal. But, for example, Goodbranson, who got a game suspension after essentially exacting the retribution that a lot of players dream of on Nick Cousins, who boarded him. The NHL has a problem on their hands of if you're not going to officiate the game in a way where you're going to be able to control it, players are going to take this into their own hands.
Yeah, Nick Cousins should have been tossed from that game immediately.
That was a brutal hit, too.
That was 10 out of 10, as bad as you can get on a board. Like, skating towards the end boards from behind with momentum should be immediate toss. And, yeah, I don't care about the suspension. I'm fully on Goodbranson's side on that one. To use the phrase again, punch him in the head till your hand breaks.
And I'm sorry, I know people don't like the code. If you're going to lay that hit,
you better step up.
Branson would probably not have much of a problem if there was a 5-minute major on the other side of that. But considering nothing happened, Branson's the type of guy who's like, all right, well, if you're not going to take him out of the game, I'm going to try my best.
And Cousins turtled twice.
You gotta just answer the bell at that point and just tuck away and just eat a couple, and that's it.
And you know what? He is going to get so many more checks finished on him.
Your life gets worse.
Yes. And not just from Goodbranson. I'm talking from the rest of the NHL. They're going to see that, and they're going to target him as a guy who's not going to answer the bell after he dishes out a hit like that. It's not a good label that you want on
How
you.
many times do you think he's going to get called a turtle on the ice the rest of the season?
That'd be the nicest thing they're going to call him.
The NHL's still like a big meathead testosterone alpha male sport. Like, when you show forms of weakness like that, like those, everyone else takes notice and they will exploit that and use it against you.
And you don't even want to be having this conversation. You want the refs to just
call a 5 and everybody moves on with their life.
Then we get to watch a power play, which is objectively better. And like, if someone's going to lay out a hit like that, and you're, I just can't believe you don't. The NHL has an officiating.
I was told there's game management. I see no management at all.
Yeah, lack thereof.
Yeah, inconsistent officiating and a checking from behind problem.
Yeah,
we need
multiple
stop
problems.
signs back on their jerseys.
That'll because they can all read with their 10th grade education.
By 10th grade, they were turning in reports that just said NHL.
They were putting up 30 goals in the dub. Haven't we learned this?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man,
what a wild week it's been.
There's not enough time in this episode.
Crazy week of hockey.
Like I mentioned, I'm happy to go on vacation. I'm not doing another honeymoon because that means getting married again. I'm not having another wedding. That was too much. But I will happily go on vacation if it means you guys get some great content to talk about.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Fire me a message if you need any help very quickly, but otherwise I will continue to keep a drink in my hand.
That'd be a fun game to see how long you'd have to leave before we would get canceled. Over under 2.5 months.
Oh, I was saying like 6 episodes. Yeah.
If there keeps being this level of content, it would be very quick.
Be fast, but you'd go out in a blaze of glory.
Oh, yeah.
I'd just be sad to not have an excuse to put up the podcast tree every year. All right, let's jump into overtime here. This has been an unhinged episode, but you know what? This is our first time back together. We had an edit here where I was just kind of glaring at Evan, and he was glaring back at me like, "No, this is my seat now. You were gone. We've taken we've taken over the show." But appreciate everyone dealing with me shaking off the rust. And let's jump into overtime. Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. If you want to join the Dub Club, you get benefits like access to our Patreon exclusive Discord. You also get access to all of our bonus content, including our Patreon exclusive bonus overtime episodes, which record right after these main ones. As well, you're automatically entered into all of our giveaways. For example, we're giving away 2 tickets to every Detroit Red Wings home game this season, the vast majority going to our Patreon supporters. So again, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast if you want to join the Dub Club. All right, let's take some questions here from our patrons. One-Eyed Larry says, after 2 impressive games, what do you feel is the most likely to happen with Berggren? I imagine he stays put until we get a healthy roster. Do you feel it's most likely he sticks with the Wings, goes back to Grand Rapids, or Stevie uses this run as a showcase to drive up the value of a trade?
When in doubt, pick the boring option because that's how traditional hockey GMs operate. So probably just rides out the season as Red Wing.
Yep. Zach Plank says, with Larkin, Compher, and Kostin on IR, Perron still on suspension, how do you guys feel about the rest of December and the Wings' ability to maintain a divisional or wild card seat?
After watching the last 4 games, not great.
Yeah, what's their schedule for December? Carolina, Philly, Anaheim, Winnipeg, Philly, New Jersey, Minnesota, Nashville, Boston. It's not an easy run.
It's an interesting mix.
Yeah.
Couple bottom feeders, couple elite teams, and then a lot of the, we'll call them comparable teams.
And it's a lot of hockey too.
Oh yeah.
Like if you're hurt and things aren't going well, you essentially want to like as big of a break as possible. And yeah, they have the Christmas break, but that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games for the rest of the month. Like you're not going to have the luxury of being able to take days off. I don't know. I mentioned before, Decembers have been tough for Detroit. I think they can hang on to a wild card spot, but I wouldn't be surprised if they are floating in and out of that for the month. Beer League Chicken Daddy says, I'm beginning to question leadership with regards to Edvinsson. I'm not even asking when we bang the table. I'm asking how hard.
Bills Mafia style.
Yeah, just jump through it.
Correct. That's where I'm at right now.
For me, it's like, okay, you don't want to call Edvinsson up while the team's doing well because the team's doing well and the defense is relatively healthy and you want him to get more minutes. Okay. You don't want to call him up now because the team is kind of getting exposed defensively and he's going to be thrown into the fire. Either one of those arguments individually is okay. I think you're eventually going to run out of time before you have to just do it. You can't always have the perfect situation, and Detroit's worst parts of their defense aren't going to get better. They just are what they are. So,
and you want him to come up with a ton of confidence, and he's on an absolute heater now. Don't wait and risk him running into a cold streak.
Yeah, I think I've already been banging the table. I don't want to say I'm going to start banging the table. I think I already have been, so I don't want to go too much longer without seeing Simon Edvinsson. I don't know what the plan is necessarily, but he has to make it through soon. Are they just waiting for injury? I'm not sure. Cletus says, is it just me or is it goaltending the biggest question mark / black cloud hovering over the Red Wings' playoff hopes? One would think the goals / game scoring pace the team is on isn't sustainable, and allowing 3+ goals a game is definitely not conducive to playoff hopes. And that's what you mentioned earlier, Brad. That's what we talked about. Have to agree. Is it the biggest question mark?
Dylan Larkin's health
is
the biggest question mark to that.
But in terms of, all things healthy, I would say that would be the case.
Yes, correct.
The Mexanadian says, well, I'm glad to have you back, Ryan. I can't say that I'm not sad we won't just have the Angry Old Man podcast to listen to anymore. As for the question, why do you think the coaching staff seems to refuse to ride a goaltender when they're hot? I think it's less about, not riding Lyon. I think it's more about needing to get more than just Lyon going. Like they need to figure out which one of Husso or Reimer is going to make this work. I don't know. I would like to see them lean on Lyon a little bit more, but I think they've done it as much as I expected since he's really kind of come forward.
I mean, based on performance and contract status, I think I'm at the point where I'd be ready to just ride Lyon and Husso.
Agreed. Yeah.
They're both on multi-year contracts. They've performed better this year. To me, it makes sense, but I don't know.
Frank the Tank says, do you think the Wings will consider buying out Kopp if Veleno continues to progress and become the team's true third-line center? Although costly, the big bonus is the added roster spot in the top 9.
I am not commenting on Kopp because you all yell at me when I do.
I think Kopp is too valuable to the PK right now, and defensively, which the team will love. I agree he's not been performing to his contract. I think the cost-benefit analysis that the team, just guessing what the team would think right now is like, no, he provides too much value in terms of, defensive or PK stability. So even if he is not producing to the level of his deal.
Be extremely shocking to me if they bought him out.
Yeah. And we'll see how it goes over the next year or so as you get closer to the, halfway point of the contract or whatever, but we'll see. The Kopp conversation will definitely continue. Schmidt-Tino says, hello, a question about goalie masks. Who decides how a goalie mask, for example, Husso's, is painted? Are there any regulations by the league or the team about it? Have there been goalies who basically use the same design for their whole career? I know Hasek and Ozzy had basically the same design every year. I imagine that this might be a very personal piece of equipment for a goalie. You're correct, it is. The league does have to sign off on designs, but goalies are generally the ones to do so with a a lot of really talented artists.
Correct. The goalie works with the artist to come up with the design. There are restrictions. The NHL signs off on it. And are their goalies to use the same design for their whole career? Come on. Who can't remember Eddie the Eagle? Eddie Belfour's eagle masks. Same eagle side of his mask, just changed the color based on the team he was playing on.
Yeah. Also, I'm sure he changed it over time, but Cujo's mask was iconic as a kid. Like that was.
Yeah. I think he changed it, but yeah, that was top tier.
And then one last one, and this one's for both of you. It's from Clappin' Bombs, Wheelin' Moms, Frankly Disgusting Edition. It says, long-time listener, first time writing in. Screw you, Reed. It says, I just wanted to tell you that the last 2 episodes were the best you've ever done. Keep up the good work.
Agreed. I would have to say so ourselves. If we took the podcast to heights I didn't even know possible.
And here I am to drag us right back down into these seats. All right, folks, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in, bearing with us as we're kind of on our bullshit this episode, but it was good fun. We'll be back with you on Sunday. We'd like to thank all of you for listening. We'd like to thank Labatt for sponsoring this episode of the podcast, as well as we'd like to thank all of our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast if you want to support the show. Also, griffinshockey.com/WWP if you want to get your tickets. To all of our name level supporters on Patreon, thank you. Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, Samuel Soderholm, Raymond's Missing Tooth, Icon, Brad's Lord and Savior, Bradley Cleveland, Glenn Brabham, Croner's Left Knee, Ashley Van Conant, Sea Lion, Keenan O'Donohue, Yanni Burgers, Meals on Wheels, Matthew M. Rice, and I'm Evan, Carl Brutanen Analuski, Carl Provy, Citizen High Five, Connor Scovey, Coyote Season Tickets and Anywhere But Tempe, Craig Kibble, Denny's Gamer Girl, Derek Enstam, DJ Denton, GOD Creatives, who's a brand new name level supporter. Welcome to the Dub Dub Club. Give Blood, Fight Probert, Hockeytown Love, Hockeytown Matt, Sam Al-Qassem, I Score Goals and Get Injured and I'm All Out of Goals, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Joel Miranda, Kalen Wood. Keep making Evan read the Patreon names, please. Was that fun? Did that go well?
No. Yes, but probably not.
King Tone Marcus, Marlon Winchester, Matt K. Cannon Fodder to the Cheesebag Army, Matt McKay, Michael Edlund, Mike Hawk, R.A. Ryan Hubbard, Scott Martin, Scree and Lube. That's what I appreciate about you. Walman's Elite Dancing D, Iser Plan Stan, General Andy Bohan of the Cheesebag Army, Sam Bankson, A.B., Adam Rose, Axel Sandy Pelika, Big Cheese, Brad Simmons, Brian Vasha, Chuck Buffchest, the Tarpless Goon, Clappin' Bombs, Wheel and Moms, Commander Ben Barron of the Cheesebag Space Force, Connor Leighton, Corey Prida, Darren Fick, D-Boss Snip Show, Dungeon Master of Puppets, Frank Stanley, Gene Sullivan, Gotta Set the Tone Boys, Griffey Boy, James Laporte, James Pridemore, Jeremiah Dobo, JM Rhapsody, John Evans Derogatory, John Engels, Josh Yelton, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Linda Hull, Maximilian, Melissa Erickson, Norris Seider, Ophelia, Steven, the Hodag, the Mexinadian, the Hat 123, Winging It in San Diego, formerly AA Ron, and your second favorite patron. Thank you so very much, folks. We'll talk to you Sunday.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to check out wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find links to other ways to support the show, such as Patreon, official podcast apparel, and more. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Winged Wheel Pod. And of course, the hosts at Brad Crisco, at Ryan Hanna WWP, and at Hockeytown Evan.